friends, welcome back, or just welcome if you're new. My name is Emily, and today I'm going to be tier ranking the Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus books. Wow, I am really reverting back to my childhood tendencies, aren't I? I know tier ranking isn't really like a trend anymore per se, but I've really wanted to do this because Percy Jackson was like my thing when I was in middle school. I had this Percy Jackson Heroes of Olympus like fan account on this app called QuizUp. I don't know if you guys remember QuizUp, but I was like super into it. I had like a lot of followers. I was getting like 600 likes per post. I was 100% totally obsessed with Percy Jackson in middle school. No question. It has been years since I've actually read these books. I think my last reread was like when I was a sophomore in high school, but I do still have strong enough opinions about them and know enough about what happens in them to be able to tier rank them. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, I'm just going to really quickly go through my tier ranking system. So here's what I'm looking at on my phone right now. And the top tier is godly. Makes sense, right? Amazing, incredible, best out of the whole series. Our second tier is demi-godly. That one is obviously pretty self-explanatory. It's like almost at the godly level, but it's not quite there, but it's still amazing. The third tier is pretty good. So like, yeah, this was, well, pretty good. Self-explanatory. Fourth tier is, it's like fine. Like I liked it, but it wasn't my favorite. And our fifth tier is absolutely not, with a bunch of A's. There is only one book I think that is going to go in that tier. I'm sure you can probably all predict what it is. Obviously, absolutely not is absolutely not. Didn't like it, bad. That's all I have to say about that. All right, I think I'm gonna go in order for this. So obviously we're going to start with The Lightning Thief. So The Lightning Thief, obviously everybody's first foray into the Percy Jackson universe. I really liked this book. I thought it was just fantastic. As a middle schooler, I really appreciated seeing, first of all, characters around my age, and second, that it was a relatively easy-ish read, I guess, because at that point I wasn't really reading a lot for fun, which you can hear all about my whole reading for school thing if you watch my video from 2 weeks ago, which is called My Thoughts on Reading for School as an English Major, which I worked really hard on, and I think it's pretty cool, so if you want to check it out, please go ahead and do that. But anyway, at that point, I was mostly reading for school, so we were reading a lot of stuff that I didn't necessarily want to read. I still liked it, but I didn't necessarily want to read it. Whereas with Percy Jackson, that was the thing that really got me back into it. So obviously with that and the half-price book story and all of that stuff, normally I think I would put The Lightning Thief in demi-godly, probably, but here's the thing. This is only the first book, and I have to take into account all of the other books that come after it. It's not like I have a limit for all of the tiers, like certain amounts of books that I can put into them, but I still think I'm just gonna have to put Lightning Thief in pretty good. Okay, next is Sea of Monsters, and here's the thing about Sea of Monsters, okay? I read this for the first time and just hated it, but this was the point in my life where I had this weird like second book slump. I think I talked about this in my Grisha trilogy video. There was a pretty long period of time where I just hated second books in series, and I don't really know why. Now, second books have become my favorite. Like, if you watched my Grisha trilogy video, you heard me gush about Siege and Storm, which is the second one, but then I reread it a few times and I really ended up liking it. So, once again, would have gone in demi-godly, but here's my issue with it. I was actually talking to Megan, one of my roommates, about this yesterday. Sea of Monsters is basically just a retelling of the Odyssey. Where's the originality? What happened to it? Where did it go? You know what I mean? It's a good book, and obviously, I like the Odyssey. I liked seeing these characters put into that situation themselves, especially at the age that they're at, because it makes it completely different from when Odysseus went on his whole adventure thing, but it's still not entirely different. You know what I mean? Like, the plot is basically the same. Like, we have Polyphemus, we have Scylla and Charybdis, we have the Sirens. All of that stuff is basically the same. So for that reason, I'm going to have to bump it down a tier and put it in pretty good. Next is The Titan's Curse. Oh boy, I think I'm going to catch some flack for this one. I thought it was just fine. I am not the hugest fan of The Titan's Curse. Here's the thing. Annabeth is 100% my favorite character out of the entire series. I love her, she's fantastic, and she was barely in The Titan's Curse, so that kind of made me upset. The more that I think about The Titan's Curse as I get older, the more I realize that it was kind of like a little bit messed up. Zoe and Bianca's deaths happened pretty much solely to further the character development of other male characters. Bianca's death obviously furthered Nico's character development. Zoe's death furthered Percy's character development. I understand why it happened. I understand that there are some things that couldn't have come out about these characters, that couldn't have been brought up in a smooth way unless those girls died. So I get it, but at the same time, especially with Bianca, it just kind of makes me a little like, ooh, yuck. It just feels like they were only plot devices and they didn't really matter, because Bianca comes back as a ghost in Battle of the Labyrinth, and I think that's the last time that we ever see her. I don't know. It just kind of made me sad because I feel like Bianca would have been a really great character. Whatever. And it was slightly cringy for me, not my favorite. Like the whole damn snack bar thing was funny for me like the first couple of times, but then as I kept like rereading it, I was like, this isn't really that funny. So for those reasons, I'm gonna have to put Titan's Curse in It's Like Fine. Next is Battle of the Labyrinth, and once again, I think I'm also going to catch some flack for this one because I loved this book. First of all, Battle of the Labyrinth had a ton of Percy and Annabeth content, which was chef's kiss. Second, there was so much that happened in this book, and I really think that this is where it took that deep dive into seriousness. Because in Titan's Curse, it certainly started, there's no denying that, because there were almost three deaths, I guess. It ended up being very dark, but in Battle of the Labyrinth is when things really get serious. That whole final battle, everything in the labyrinth was intense, and Nico wanting to take Percy's soul? What? It's crazy. Also, the whole Mount St. Helens thing in this book with the explosion and Calypso and the burning of the funeral shroud, that part is so good. And I'm sorry, the first Percabeth kiss, how could you not just, like, my brain exploded, I recall when I was reading that. And there are good Annabeth moments, like just by herself, like with Janus, like the god of doorways or whatever, where she has to like choose a path. And that kind of stuff comes up in the Heroes of Olympus series as well. And holy moly, I still have to go through the Heroes of Olympus series. This is gonna be such an incredibly long video. Holy crap. So anyway, I don't think I gave a ranking to the Battle of the Labyrinth yet, but I'm gonna put it in demigodly. It's so good. And last on the list for the original series is The Last Olympian. It's going to be very difficult for me to talk about this book. The Last Olympian is just on another level. The action gets going just immediately when the book starts. Beckendorf's death and the whole thing that happens on the ship, and then Percy has to come back and tell Selena that Beckendorf is gone. Like, you can feel the heaviness absolutely immediately. So much Percy and Annabeth content in this book, and it makes me so... The emotions that I felt when I was reading all the Percabeth stuff in this book, unparalleled, unmatched, through the roof. Like, whoa. Annabeth taking a knife for him because of the Achilles heel stuff. And the whole, you're cute when you're worried, your eyebrows get all scrunched up. I don't remember who told him. I think it was Will, who told Percy, like, you need to come quick. She's deteriorating or whatever because of the poison. He's like rushing back on the motorcycle, and like, you can just feel how worried he is, and like your heart beats just as quickly as his probably would have. And of course, the underwater kiss. Speaking of intense things, when Nico and Percy go to Luke's mom's house, that scared me. The cookies and the milk and the sandwiches, and weren't there like dolls there or something like that, and the mist like in her eyes. This book is just so intense. There's so much going on. Also, I want to talk about how incredible Percy is in this book. The fighting through all of this exhaustion and terror when he like can't get sleep, so Talia tells him to please go to sleep at the hotel. And when Rachel shows up and he's afraid of what Annabeth is going to think and of what Rachel is going to think of Annabeth, the passing of the knife to Luke to get Kronos out of him instead of Percy doing it or instead of Annabeth doing it is simply poetic justice. And his demand to the gods at the end about where they offered him immortality, and he was like, actually, no. The only thing I want is for you to actually take care of your children, because we need you. We're suffering without some sort of help, because obviously we don't know how to navigate this mortal world when we have immortal blood inside of us, and it's just really confusing. So if you could help us out, please, that would be fantastic. It's an echo back to when Annabeth was about to join the Hunters. Percy just felt sick to his stomach. He was like, if I lose Annabeth, I don't know what's going to happen. And then the exact same thing happens here, where I'm sure Annabeth feels the same way, because we do kind of know, because he looks at her and he can see how terrified she is that he's going to take them up on this offer. And See, I told you I was going to talk about this forever. There's no other place to put The Last Olympian than godly. Okay, now we are moving on to the Heroes of Olympus series. First, we have The Lost Hero, and as I'm sure everybody who has read the Heroes of Olympus series knows, I was just about to put this book down until Annabeth showed up and said Percy's name. I was like, okay, Jason, Piper, Leo, like who are these people? Why do I care about them? Like I said, then Annabeth showed up. She was like, I'm looking for my boyfriend, Percy Jackson. I was like, okay, we're gonna keep going. I actually don't remember a heck of a lot about this book. I know the general gist of it. I know they ended up at the Wolf House. I know they met like Keown. I know they like went to Chicago. I just remember bits and pieces of this book. I just feel like it wasn't that memorable. And I just don't think that it was the right one to start out with. I think if he would have switched Son of Neptune and The Lost Hero, I would have felt better about The Lost Hero. As it stands though, I just wasn't super excited about it. It was still a good book, but it just wasn't my favorite. I'm putting The Lost Hero in, it's like fine, because it's just fine. All right, next is The Son of Neptune, and once again, when I first read this book, I didn't like it. It was that weird second book thing. I don't know what that's all about. The Son of Neptune, I think, probably has some of my favorite Percy stuff in it. We really get to see like the volatility and the terror behind his whole life as a demigod. I mean, the whole thing where he was drowning, it was so interesting to explore that volatility and that change in his character. It's just cool. Also, The Son of Neptune is extremely underrated, and I think that's why Hazel and Frank are just always underrated, but Hazel and Frank are really great characters. First of all, they have both been through hell, Hazel through literal hell, and second, they both lead these very precarious lives, Frank especially, because he literally has like a stick that if it burns to the end, he's going to be dead. They were developed much better than Jason, Piper, and Leo in their debut book. Hazel and Frank, when they're first introduced, we get their stories, which I think is really nice. And honestly, The Son of Neptune was really dark. Like all the stuff with Hazel and her mom and Hades and Gaia, I was like floored. It's just such a good book. The ending fight, I remember being really great. And this was like the only book in the whole Heroes of Olympus series that ended with a relatively happy ending, because we know that Annabeth and her Greek crew are coming and Percy sees them and he's like, let's go meet my family or something like that. I don't remember what the line was, but it was really sweet. I am going to put Son of Neptune into demigodly. It deserves it. I'll say it. Next is Mark of Athena. The camaraderie in this book. This is like the only time that we actually get to see the seven really together and working together on the Argo 2. I wish we would have had more of those opportunities, and I'm a little salty that we didn't have those opportunities to see them like that, but Mark of Athena is just gonna have to do. It's a good book. I like the camaraderie. I like how the friendships are explored. And once again, like I said, Annabeth is my favorite character. And the fact that we get these Annabeth moments in here where she is taking control of what she can take control of, and we learn how upset she is that her mom is not speaking to her, and that her mom said that she was like disappointed in her or didn't love her or something like that, that she let her down. You get to see Annabeth in this book, which is the first time we really get to see inside of her, because I think this is the first time she has a POV. Seeing inside her head after waiting years to see inside her head was really cool. Her whole thing with Arachne was crazy awesome. And of course, how can we not talk about the fall into Tartarus? I was so shocked. I remember sitting with my hand over my mouth for like a solid couple minutes because I just couldn't believe it. I remember making like edits of this scene with like fan art and like the quotes where he says like, "You're not getting away from me, never again." Like, what? I do have to say that I wish the friendships were developed a bit more. Because like I said, this is the only time that we really get to see the whole Argo 2 crew together on the ship. I wish there had been more. I'm gonna put it in demigodly because obviously I've been gushing about it this whole time, but I just wish it could have been more. Okay friends, House of Hades. House of Hades is my favorite out of the entire Heroes of Olympus series, hands down. Percy and Annabeth in Tartarus, Dark Percy. Can we just talk about Dark Percy for a second? The misery thing and how Annabeth was afraid of him. She was like, please don't ever do that again. And how he was manipulating Bob. What would have happened if they had been down there any longer? I don't know. And that's what's so interesting and cool and scary to think about. And I always see like fan theories where it was like, what if Bob hadn't been able to close the elevator? What if one of them had to stay behind? Like, who would have gone back to the land of the living and who would have stayed in Tartarus? And that's very interesting and difficult and scary to think about as well. Everything else in this book was really cool too, with everyone who was still back on the other side and their quest to save Percy and Annabeth while they're still trying to deal with the whole Titan thing and the splitting of the gods between Roman and Greek and Gaia and all of her like minions. Also, the reveal of Nico's big secret, which first of all, intense. Second of all, heartbreaking because Nico thought that he didn't deserve love because of how he felt, which is totally not true. And 3, how sweet Jason was about it, where he said, look, man, it's okay. I'm glad you told me. I will not tell anybody. And I'm here for you and I support you and I love you and all of this stuff that Nico never expected to hear. I'm putting House of Hades in godly. Absolutely, hands down, so good. And finally, the moment you have all been waiting for, the blood of Olympus. I feel like it goes without saying that blood of Olympus goes in absolutely not, because absolutely not. I did not like this book. I did not like the characterization. I did not like the development. I did not like the final battle. I did like Will and Nico. I did like Percy and Annabeth. I'm pretty sure Hazel meets with Hecate in this book, and that was cool. I think we get a Nico POV in this book, which was really awesome. But like, other than that, I saw this post once that said that Jason getting glasses got more page time than developing the relationships between the characters in this book. And you know what? It's true. It's literally true. Jason getting glasses took up more space than the final battle. I'm sorry, what? And I was coming into this book thinking it was going to be similar to The Last Olympian, where basically the entire book was a battle scene. I was completely and totally incorrect. Blood of Olympus goes into absolutely not, for obvious reasons. The stakes were just really low, and it just was super underwhelming. And that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you so choose, and I will see you next time. Happy reading!